Hey guys, welcome back to Hook with Anime. If you like the video, make sure to subscribe to my channel. Let's begin. Chapter 1. Naruto opened his eyes. He was facing up to the night sky. The first thing he felt was the paining hunger in his stomach. Or, at least where his stomach would have been. Instead, there was a gigantic gaping hole there. Naruto groaned. He wondered how the hell he's still alive with a hole like that in his body. The next thing to catch his eye was the sand he was lying on. It was cold, and very grainy. Painful, to lie on. He stood up and smacked his head on a diamond-hard tree. But instead of hitting his head, a layer of bone protected him. He felt his face and realized that he was wearing a mask, just like a fox's skull. He had the sudden urge to get down on all fours, and so he did. He did. He noticed that he was covered in red fur, protected by a skeleton-type thing, just like his six-tailed form. Realization struck him, and he looked behind himself, only to be met with the sight of one swishing tail. He didn't know what to make of it. Did he let Kurama take over his body? No, it was different. He distinctly remembered killing Toby, then fighting Sasuke at the Valley of the End. Did he lose? No, he won. But they both died. He remembered that much. So where was he now? It sure as hell didn't look High no Kuni, nor did it look like any of the elemental nations. Maybe it was Tsuchi no Kuni. But there weren't supposed to be any deserts there. Possibly Kase no Kuni. No, he visited Gaara there many times. There wasn't a single area in Kase no Kuni like this. So where the hell was he? Wait, was he in hell? That was the only possibility that made sense right now. He was in hell. He was going to be tortured by monsters and creatures to repent for crimes in his life as a shinobi. Welcome to Hawako Mundo, brat. Naruto turned around. There, he saw two creatures. One was extremely short, and crawled along on all fours. He had a mask that completely covered his face. The other was much larger, like a gorilla. It even had a mask that was like a gorilla's skull. The difference was that its legs were puny and its forearms were gigantic. Naruto's stomach started aching again. He was hungry, and for some reason, these two creatures in front of him looked pretty damn appetizing. We found a new hollow around. Hee, laughed the smaller one, he's pretty big too. We're going to feast tonight. Is that what he was? A hollow? What hell was that? Am I in hell? Naruto tentatively asked. Nah, kid, you're in Hawako Mundo. It's where we hollow live. We're the creatures that feast on fellow souls. Trust me, they taste delicious. Especially a newborn hollow. Those are the best. The big one started guffawing like an idiot. Having heard all the information that he needed, Naruto assumed his battle-ready stance. Small hollow laughed and was about to say something, but he never got the chance. In less than a second, Naruto was on top of him and had already punched his fist, paw, through the hollow's face. The ravenous and bloodthirsty Naruto immediately set upon devouring his prey. The big hollow reeled back in surprise, and before he had a chance to react, Naruto began eating him alive. Unfortunately for them, no one could hear their scream in the deserts of Hawako Mundo. 147 years later. It wasn't very often that an Ijuka's class Manos Grande graced the living world with its appearance. But tonight that was the case. After 147 years of feasting only upon hollows and evolving through the stages of the Manos, Uzumaki Naruto would be visiting the human world for the first time. At 3 in the morning, Kurosaki Ichigo and Kuchiki Rukia got a call for a hollow. Ichigo was glad to have Rukia back from the Soul Society. It wasn't annoying to get up in the middle of the night to fight a half-assed hollow. But this time was serious trouble. Standing in the middle of the road was a frog-like hollow holding the soul of an innocent little girl. It was just about to put her in its mouth. They were too far away to get to the girl in time, and the ranged attacks that both Rukia and Ichigo had would only end up harming the girl also. But before either Ichigo or Rukia could react, something pounced on the frog's back. The frog hollow howled in pain and dropped the girl. Rukia sprang at her chance to grab the girl before she was back in harm's way. After a few minutes of struggling, The frog fell over, dead. The thing walked over its body and started feasting upon its corpse. It finished it pretty quickly too. Hey Rukia, Ichigo called, it's another hollow, should I take care of it? For the first time, Rukia paid attention to the second hollow, that now turned its attention to the two Shinigami. It looked like a human-sized fox, with 6 tails swinging behind its back. Its mask was even fox-like. Rukia felt its spiritual pressure and suddenly recognized it from her training back in the Soul Society and textbooks she had read. This was Manos Grande. But no ordinary Manos Grande, it was an Ejuka's class Manos Grande. The second stage of evolution of Manos. Suddenly Hitsugaya Toshiro showed up, the captain of the 10th division of the Gote 13. Hitsugaya Taiko, what are you doing here? Rukia asked. I felt the reiatsu of a Manos. Never thought that I'd come face to face with an Ejuka's, though, he answered. The Ejuka's chuckled, well, hello to you, too. So you're Hitsugaya Toshiro, I recognize that name. You're one of those captains. And that one's the famous Kurosaki Ichigo, the substitute Shinigami. That one's Kuchiki Rukia. Aizen's made your names pretty famous all over Hueco Mundo. The 3 Shinigami tensed at his words. But then again, I don't really listen to that idiot Aizen much in the first place. A few other Shinigami appeared out of nowhere and landed beside Hitsugaya. Hitsugaya looked at all of them and ordered, Abarai, Matsumoto, Madarame, Ayasagawa, stay back. This is an Ejuka's class. Leave it to me. The other Shinigami stepped back and grunted in approval, but readied their weapons in case they had to provide backup. This time, the Ejukas went into full-blown laughter. When he finally calmed down he said, I'm sorry. I just couldn't help myself. It's like the baby's hiding behind the mother. But it was the right idea anyways. Not a single one of you could beat me. I'm Uzumaki Naruto, remember it. Toshiro cocked his head to the side, you sure are an odd one for an Ejuka's, Uzumaki. Well, how many Ejukas have you met? Asked Naruto. Toshiro scratched his head, not that many. Well there you have it. If you haven't met that many Ejukas, how hell are you supposed to know which ones are normal or not, Naruto replied. Toshiro raised his sword, that doesn't matter right now, because you will fight me and lose. Don't count on it, retorted Naruto. Naruto blurred from view and Toshiro was just able to move quickly enough to keep from having his head sliced off. Sit upon the frozen heavens. Hirenmaru. A dragon made of ice extended from Hitsugaya's Zanpakuto and dove towards Naruto. To everyone's surprise, Naruto just raised a paw and swiped at it, sending flying to the side. You'll have to do better than that, Hitsugaya Taiko, Naruto mocked. Naruto felt something on him, and looked down to see ice forming around his feet. He broke free of it by releasing an extremely intense wave of reiatsu. The ice cracked and flew in all directions. For a captain, that's pretty pathetic, Naruto teased, how about you switch over from your Shikai to Bankai? All ice retracted back to Toshiro. Toshiro raised his sword in front of him and shouted, Bankai. Ice wings formed around Takiro and a tail of ice appeared. His Zanpakuto appeared to be encased in ice. You ready, hollow? Naruto nodded. Toshiro pointed his Zanpakuto at Naruto and a large burst of ice erupted from it, trapping Naruto within in it. Toshiro then proceeded to shatter the ice. Stupid hollow. Bankai was bit much even for you. Toshiro then felt something tap his shoulder. He turned around only to see the Ahuchas he supposedly defeated. Wah. Boo. Naruto let loose a large sero from his mouth, completely obliterating everything in its path. Hitsugaya Taiko. All the Shinigami called out worry. Toshiro appeared to have been pushed back while his ice wings were shattered. The only reason Toshiro was able to survive the blast was because he was able to wrap his ice wings around his body to protect himself. Bit by bit, his ice wings and Bankai began repairing themselves. Naruto chanced a glance down at the other Shinigami. They all looked worried but refrained from interfering. Toshiro swung HIW sword in an arc and a large array of ice daggers sprayed at Naruto. They were unavoidable and Naruto was pierced on all sides by them. Naruto fell to the ground with a thud. The other Shinigami were engrossed with the fight. Toshiro landed next to Naruto and said, "Your power is greater than that of the average Ejukas, based on research done by the 12th Division. Care to explain why that is?" Naruto mumbled something incoherent. "I'm sorry, what was that?" Toshiro asked. "I said," Naruto repeated, "how many times you gonna fall for the same trick?" Toshiro gave him a puzzled look, but that was quickly replaced by a look of pain when an arm made of pure evil red Reiatsu burst out of the ground and delivered an uppercut to Toshiro's jaw. Toshiro landed a couple feet away, but by that time Naruto already charged up a fireball, which was promptly shot at Toshiro. After the fire from the explosion died down, an unharmed Toshiro was revealed getting back to his feet while the orange-haired Lady Shinigami with gigantic breasts stood in between Naruto and him. Growl. Hineka. Ash filled the air and a tornado formed around Naruto, and he was suddenly cut and scraped all over his body. The tornado picked him up and sent him flying into the wall of a flower shop. Naruto groaned while getting to his feet when he was knocked down by a whip-sword hybrid. When Naruto looked up he saw all the Shinigami pointing their Zanpakutos at him. Looked like it was time to get serious. Like last time, he let loose a wave of pure Reiatsu, blowing them all back, including the wave of smoke. "Something isn't right here," Toshiro said, "that Ejukas is more powerful than any other Mainos have fought. It's even more powerful than any Ejukas described by the Research and Development Division." Naruto spoke up. "Well, that's what you get when you fight an Ejukas who's nearing the level of Vasto Lord." All Shinigami reeled back in surprise. They had only heard of Vasto Lords in legends. "Relax, everyone. He may be nearing Vasto Lord, but he's still an Ejukas for now. We can take him," Toshiro encouraged. Toshiro was having internal turmoil right now. He needed to take down this hollow without having his team injured. But that seemed impossible in this situation. He motioned for Renji to come over. "What is it, Taiko?" asked Renji. "Please, ask Soul Society to send backup. Preferably another Taiko. This hollow is far too powerful for us to handle on our own," said Toshiro. "Yes, sir," replied Renji. He didn't particularly agree, but he decided to trust Hitsugaya Taiko's judgment. He used Shunpo to disappear from the battlefield. Toshiro turned his attention back to Naruto, who was currently fighting the other Shinigami, and brought his sword forward. Naruto saw the attack only second too late. A wave of ice blared forward from Toshiro's sword and nailed his torso. This other Shinigami's hits looked like push pins in comparison to this. This one actually hurt. "Ichigo," Toshiro called out, "you will have to release your Bankai. Just the two of us will fight him. Please back off, the rest of you. If you interfere, you may end up injured, or dead." The other Shinigami took quite a few steps back, while the famous Ichigo as well as the captain Toshiro took a few steps forward. A large amount of Reiatsu bore down on Naruto as the two released their Bankai. Naruto had already seen Toshiro's Bankai, but Ichigo's Bankai was new to him. His sword shrunk down to a black short sword. Naruto could literally feel the power radiating off the sword. He made a mental note to not underestimate it. "Getsuga Tensho!" Ichigo roared. A black wave shot out towards Naruto, who was only able to narrowly avoid it. He dodged it by jumping into the air. That was his mistake. Toshiro was waiting above him and brought his Zanpakuto down on Naruto's head, hard. The speed of Naruto flying into the ground could only be rivaled by a rocket. A large crater formed in the middle of the street upon impact. Toshiro, Ichigo and the others waited a few tantalizing moments to see what happened. Naruto groggily got up, but once he was on his feet, he was ready to go. By now Naruto realized that his normal hollow skill set wasn't going to work against them. And he knew that the Toshiro guy realized that Naruto wasn't exactly using Reiatsu. It was denser. I wasn't Reiatsu, it was chakra. As Naruto was preparing to attack once more, he sensed a presence behind him and jumped away just in time for a Shinigami to come flying down from the sky. This Shinigami's Reiatsu was nowhere near that of Toshiro or Ichigo. Maybe around the level of the Rukia girl and the guy with feathers adorning his eyes. Then Naruto felt a gigantic amount of pressure bear down on him. He looked up and saw the pineapple head from before land near the Shinigami that fell from the sky. Naruto couldn't help but think, strange, that guy's hair reminds me of someone. And sleeping. It reminds of a person and also of sleeping. Maybe about a person who slept. Someone in a coma. Then the source of the large Reiatsu landed next to the fallen Shinigami. It was the weirdest thing. This guy had the head of a wolf. A motherfucking wolf. Naruto had to admit, it was pretty damn cool, yet slightly disturbing. Who were this guy's parents? The wolf Shinigami bent down and helped up the fallen Shinigami. Be careful, 6th seat Ikora. You have plenty of potential, don't waste it on skydiving, without a parachute. The wolf man scolded. Ikora laughed embarrassed and rubbed the back of his head. Sorry Komamura Taiko. Naruto narrowed his eyes. The wolf head was a captain. Komamura Taiko. Never heard of you. I hope that means you're not very strong. But it's probably my luck that you can kill me as easily as I can kill a Jillian. Toshiro seemed annoyed. Komamura Taiko. I don't mean to question your judgment, but do you think that bringing a 6th seat on a mission where I specifically requested a captain, is a good idea? Komamura turned his attention to Hitsugaya. Of course, he's new with the squad and he needs experience. Plus, anyone else ranked higher than him was busy. Anyways, that hollow is the problem. I feel something off about him. His Reiatsu feels different. Hitsugaya Taiko. Ichigo, please stand down. I would like to test this Manos on my own for a bit. I want to see what's wrong with it. Komamura then drew his Zanpakuto and went into ready stance. Not really in a hurry to face another captain class Shinigami, Naruto stood his ground. Roar. Tenkan. Naruto stood, waiting for Komamura Taiko's Shikai to take effect. Naruto noticed no visible difference, and was thinking that Komamura Taiko had a brain fart and forgot his Zanpakuto's command. Hollow. What is your name? Komamura Taiko asked. Uzumaki Naruto. Believe it. Naruto responded. Well, Naruto-san, I do not wish to hurt you, so if you would come along quietly I may be able to send you to Soul Society without causing you any pain. There you may be examined for your inconsistencies in Reiatsu by Shinigami Research and Development Institute. Forget it, Komamura Taiko. As tempting as that offer sounds, I prefer it in Hueco Mundo. Naruto retorted. I see. Was all Komamura offered back. He then brought his Zanpakuto down from above his head. At this distance, Naruto didn't expect to be hurt at all, but was completely flabbergasted when a disembodied arm came down at the same rate and angle as Komamura's arm. Except this arm was so much larger that it reached Naruto and it held an oversized sword in it. Naruto didn't have enough time to avoid the attack and was crushed by the sword. The sharp end of the sword just being able to off his left front leg. When Komamura lifted his arm back up, Naruto retreated a few steps back, limping all the way. Much to everyone's astonishment, Naruto's arm began to quickly regenerate. His arm healed so well, it was as if it had never been cut off in the first place. Wanting to see more of what Komamura Taiko could do, Naruto decided to test him. Naruto charged up a rather weak Sero in his mouth, and fired at Komamura. As expected, Komamura used the giant blade to deflect the Sero upwards. While Komamura Taiko was distracted with this, Naruto disappeared from sight. That's neither Shunpo nor Sonito. So what the hell is that? Oh shit. Sajin-san, watch out. Toshiro warned. Komamura looked down just in time to see Naruto flying upwards from right underneath him, his right claw held out as a knife to slice Komamura's throat. Komamura's eyes widened as he realized that he wouldn't be able to deflect the attack in time. Naruto let the beginnings of a victory smile grace his lips, but just as he was getting to the good part, a Zanpakuto intercepted his frown and looked to the left. It was Toshiro who blocked it. Naruto brought up his newly formed left claw up and stabbed it straight through Hitsugaya's chest, then immediately jumped back. Hitsugaya fell to his knee, heavily panting. Komamura picked him up and carried him to the sidelines, asking Renji to take Hitsugaya Taiko back to the 4th Division barracks in the Soul Society. Renji complied and leapt away as fast as possible, carrying Toshiro on his back. Komamura then motioned the other Shinigami over and asked for their help in defeating Naruto. Lastly, he turned to Naruto and said, "I don't usually hold grudges against anyone, but you, my friend, must be brought to justice." Naruto grinned foxily as he dodged the other Shinigami's Zanpakuto. Dance. Soda no Shirayuki. Grow. Hozukimaru. Growl. Hinaka. Bloom. Fuji Kujaku. Some form of danger came from all these Zanpakuto, whether it be ash, ice, or physical attacks. After he successfully dodged all the Shinigami, he jumped on a rooftop of a nearby bookstore. He was able to get a good look at the area. But something was off. Where was Ikora, the 6th seat that came with Komamura Taiko? Blaze. Nobi. Ikora finally made himself known, appearing behind Naruto's back. He pointed his Zanpakuto at Naruto as a whirlwind of fire blazed to life from it and entirely surrounding Naruto and trapping him a burning prison. The prison he was in started to shrink contiguously until the flames were feeding off of Naruto's body. Ikora used Shunpo to appear with the group of Shinigami. For a while, all that could be heard was the agonizing scream of Naruto as he was being burned to death. Eventually, the flames dispersed, revealing no remains. Everyone finally gave a sigh of relief, while a few gave respectful nods to Ikora. Ikora felt proud of himself for earning the respect of his captain and was going to give himself a pat on the back, when he didn't feel a thing. Naturally, he looked down only to scream out in horror. What was once the left side of his body was now nothing but a bloody mess. His entire left arm as well as a good portion of his torso had been bitten off. Before he could react any farther, his head and upper body were bitten off in one clean chomp. All the remaining Shinigami turned to Naruto, their faces showing nothing but horror, save for Madarame and Komamura, whose down unbridled fury. After finishing his meal, Naruto felt a sudden rush of power. Because he had only eaten other hollows in the past, he thought this spike in his Reiatsu was normal after eating Shinigami. Boy, was he wrong. What the hell? I'm shrinking. What the hell if going on? True to his thoughts, Naruto was shrinking, dramatically in fact. But it was only Komamura who knew what was happening. That hollow will no longer be a Ijuka's. Naruto's shrinking stopped when he reached just under the length of a Great Dane. He was compelled, no, forced to stand upright. His body was no longer covered in fur, but a thick layer of bone that was colored to resemble the fur. His blonde hair was now visible, yet the fox skull mask remained. The only difference being that his sky blue eyes were visible. Naruto looked behind himself. Instead of 6, there were now 9 complete tails swishing around behind him. To say the least, Naruto felt absolutely amazing. Zem 107. Back in Soul Society, everyone had been informed of the situation. Captain Commander Yamamoto was holding an emergency captain's meeting to discuss what to do in this state of emergency. Many suggestions were thrown around, but everyone agreed that this Vasto Lord must be dealt with. In response to the captain's quarreling, Yamamoto decided to form an emergency response team. Enough with your bickering. Yamamoto commanded. I have decided that I will send Vice Captains Hisagi, Kira, Katetsu, and Iba. I will also send along 5th Seat Haruno of the 4th Division, 4th Seat Nara of the 10th Division, and 7th and 3rd Seat of the 6th Division Hinata Hyuga and Neji Hyuga, respectively. To lead this task force will be the new 5th Division Captain Sasuke Uchiha. Understood. Now get moving, we have no time to waste. Uchiha Taiko nodded and moved to collect his team. Zem 107. Komamura Taiko fell to the ground, completely exhausted. This hollow seemed to have a limitless supply of energy. By now, everyone was on the ground. Komamura couldn't tell if they were dead or alive, he just knew that they wouldn't be getting up anytime soon. Hey Foxtrot, take a gander at this, called out Ichigo. Naruto paid him no mind, and instead grabbed Komamura's Zanpakuto out of his hand. He raised it above his head and prepared to bring it down, ending Komamura's life. Ichigo watched helplessly. He had his left arm and both legs broken by Naruto. He was so sore all over, he could barely move an inch. But as he watched Naruto about to kill Komamura Taiko, he felt the need to do something. He grasped his Zanpakuto and prepared to release a Getsuga Tenshou. But apparently it wasn't needed. As soon as Naruto began his downward arc, a flash of blue slammed into him, sending him flying backwards. Still can't take care of a measly hollow, you're pathetic Kurosaki, or you stepped onto the ground and adjusted his glasses. Instead of mocking him back as he usually did, Ichigo warned him, get out of here Ishida. See Komamura Taiko over there. That Manos took him down in mere minutes. That guy's a Vasto Lord. Get out of here Ishida. All the more reason to kill him, or you stated blandly. You should pay more attention to your friend's warnings, Dadbao, or Yu's eyes widened. He hadn't even sensed the hollow move, yet here he was, face to face with it. Before he could react, the hollow grabbed his face and threw him down the street. PSSH, I'm not usually so disrespectful, but that guy was a Quincy, right? He was just as pathetic as you Shinigami. Naruto smirked. Don't you dare class me in with those idiots. Naruto turned around, unsurprised. Ryu was slowly limping towards him, his bow out. Naruto threw his head back and chuckled, how many people are gonna keep showing up to this party, huh? Naruto had already sensed the opening of a Senkaimon and was going to laugh again, when he realized exactly who was coming. He quickly turned his attention to the Quincy and said, I have to go right now. We can continue our little chat next time. Goodbye. Naruto opened a garganta and stepped through, sealing it from the inside. Ishida let out a sigh of relief, then realized that he was the only conscious one here. The local authorities were bound to show up any minute, and he would be the only visible one. Things were going to get messy and, as USUA, he was going to be in the middle of it. What the hell happened here? Hisagi asked. Ishida had only just made out the presence of more Shinigami. All of them had considerably high amount of Reiatsu. No doubt a team sent to exterminate the hollow that was present until just recently. If you're looking for the hollow, you just missed it. It left not a minute ago. But he did leave behind quite a mess. I will leave it in your hands now. Ishida said as he walked down the street. Azane, Izuru, Haruno, these people need medical attention immediately, Hisagi called out. The three, addressed quickly served and set about patching up the wounded. Uchiha Taiko shunpoed next to Hisagi. Quite a grisly scene if you ask me Taiko. What do say we do? We were ordered to exterminate the Vasto Lord, our next orders come directly from you. What do we do now? Hisagi asked. Sasuke gazed on at the sight in front of him. One half-dead Taiko, one dead Shinigami, and the whole Karakura patrol squad unconscious. Not to mention the severely wounded Hitsugaya Taiko back in Soul Society. The raven-haired duck butt pondered the situation. We cannot chase the hollow into Hawako Mundo, otherwise we would be put at disadvantage. We can't just wait for him to ambush us again. What happened to them may happen to us. We cannot return to Soul Society, otherwise we would give the hollow a perfect chance to attack this town's civilian population. We cannot make any decisions until we have more information. Sasuke replied. Hawako Mundo was basically a barren desert. Not all that exciting or fun. But for some reason, Naruto just had this feeling in the pit of his stomach that either he or a friend lived in a desert at one point in their lives. It was only because of this reason that Naruto did not mad in his time living here. But this time Naruto had a reason to go bonkers. For the past few days he had been in Hawako Mundo, someone had been following him. Naruto has tried to escape this person by heading into the forest of Manos. Instead of evading this person, the other Manos Grande seemed to help his pursuer in their quest to find Naruto. Normally, this would have caused Naruto to welcome this person with open arms, but ever since Aizen arrived, no one seems to trust anyone. As a result, Naruto prepared a trap for his guest that would commence in about, now. Jillians, attack! Naruto commanded. About 7 Jillian-class Manos stepped out from behind the trees and fired multiple Seros at the shadow of a tree Naruto was pointing at. All the Seros hit their targets within moments of each other and not only made a sound so loud it made Naruto temporarily deaf, but also created a shockwave that could be felt for kilometers around. Naruto was about to bathe in his own triumph when he felt the cold metal of a wakizashi against the right side of his throat. "Wasn't expecting ya to kill me, that's for sure," said a curious voice. His voice sounded nice enough, but you couldn't pick apart any emotion from it at all, no matter how hard you tried. "Well, why wouldn't I?" Naruto asked. "You were the one following me." "Good point," said the man as he sheathed his Zanpakuto. Naruto waved his hand to the ceiling and ordered, "Jillians, stand down." With that, the Jillians slowly dispersed back into the forest. Naruto sighed. "I remember when I was still a Jillian. Of course you wouldn't understand. You were always a Shinigami, am I right, Jin?" Jin gave a nod with his ever-present smile. "Aizen wants to speak with ya, Naruto." Naruto shook his head. "Tell that bastard that I refuse his Arrancar offer. It's not worth anything to me. I'm content where I am." "Oh well, I guess Aizen won't be very happy," Jin said with a shrug. "He's been trying really hard to get ever since you wear a jukas. But there is something about you confuses me." Naruto looked down from the ceiling. "And what would that be?" "Whenever Konami or any of the Espada came down to get ya, ya were always on guard and had an entourage of Jillians with ya. So why did ya drop your guard and soldiers around me, when I'm the one ya should be most concerned about?" Naruto just shrugged. "You seem different. Definitely creepy, but not different in that sort of way. I don't know, you're just different. You don't seem too power hungry like the other guys." Jin plastered on a smile again. "Well, I'm happy to hear that. In fact, I'm so happy that I have a proposal for ya." Genuinely interested in what Jin was saying now, he leaned his ear in and listened to what Jin was saying. Zem 107. Ever since Aizen showed up, most Manos were not happy with their new rule, and a majority of them rebelled. But due to the awesome power Aizen possessed, most rebellions were immediately put down. This did not stop others from forming new revolutionaries though. The leaders of one such group were a Vasto Lord class Memos Grande named Chiiko and a newly formed Vasto Lord named Gaara. Chiiko was basically a large hawk, complete with wings and everything. The way you could tell her apart from a real hawk was by their size, with Chiiko measuring in at about 3.5 meters tall. Gaara on the other hand was nearly identical to a human. The only difference being a raccoon mask that entirely covered his face, a single tail swishing behind his back and his ability to control and manipulate sand, a very useful ability in Hueco Mundo. Ever since Gaara and Chiiko had met all those years ago, they were inseparable. They had a mother-son relationship. Chiiko looked out for and cared for Gaara like the mother. Gaara, on the other hand, would create mischief and play around all day. They were happy until Aizen showed up. One would think that hollows were loners due to their normally arrogant, abrasive, and murderous personalities, but this was not true. This only applied to some hollows. Even though they all ate humans, there were a few hollows who were actually nice. Two of which were Gaara and Chiiko. Due to their compassion as well as success, many hollows joined their ranks. But fate has its way of sliding even brightest of flowers into shade. "Give me a status report win," Chiiko demanded, dodging a Sero. Win, although a normal hollow, was exceptionally strong and had become bodyguard to Gaara. "Madam, all of our troops are dead. There is literally nothing left of us. You need to escape, Madam Chiiko. Whatever remains of us and I will hold off our attacker. You must escape so you can fight another day." "Don't give me that bullshit," Chiiko shouted while blasting off a Sero of her own. "Our attacker is the fifth Espada. No matter how strong you guys are, you will be decimated in a matter of moments. No, the only logical option left is for you all to leave. Please take Gaara with you. He will lead a new resistance in the future. I will hold this Espada off until you are a safe distance away, then I will use a kamikaze attack to kill the Espada and I." Win's eyes widened at her response. Before he could protest, Chihiko leaned down next to Gaara and opened a garganta and ordered the 7 soldiers that remained of her army to climb through. Although there was much hesitation, the stern look from Chihiko forced them all through, even when. Chihiko then turned her attention to Gaara. Gaara, please listen to me. I am going to die today. You will never see me again. But please, do not let that hinder you. You will become the light that shines in the darkness. You will eradicate Aizen. Gaara, you are the future. And as such, you must survive today. Go, live on, and please obtain victory for us on another day. Gaara couldn't help but let the tears flow. Please don't cry, my son. It is time for you to grow up. She gently pushed Gaara through the garganta, then gave her last order as the leader of this resistance: take care of Gaara. Act his guide until the day he is ready to fight by himself. Every hollow took her words to heart. Chihiko was their beloved leader who protected them through thick and thin. The least they could do was to fulfill her last wish. As the garganta began closing, Chihiko raised her left wing in a wave goodbye. All of a sudden Sero blasted by and disintegrated her entire arm. Gaara screamed out in anger and was trying to rush out onto the battlefield but was being restrained by his protectors. Chihiko gave her son one last smile before the garganta was sealed off completely. How touching. I never knew a hollow could have such a tear-jerking moment. Neutra, the 5th Espada, mocked them by fake crying, then bursting out in inhuman laughter. Oh well, now I get to fight the most powerful one. Pray. Santa Teresa. After the smoke cleared, Neutra stood with 4 arms, each holding a gigantic scythe. Neutra cackled, then charged at her wings and superior ability. Chihiko took to the air. As soon as she deemed herself high enough, she opened her beak and shot a purple Sero. Neutra easily maneuvered around the attack and, using Sonido, appeared behind her. Although taken by surprise, Chihiko was not one to lose her cool in the middle of a battle. She hardened the white feathers on her right wing until they reflected purple and were as hard as bone. She swung her wing around her back and cut off one of Neutra's arms. Using her free wing, she pushed all of Neutra's other arms to the side and attempted to deliver a kick to his abdomen. To her surprise, 2 arms grew out of his belly and grabbed her leg, twisting her around until she facing up to the sky. Neutra then opened his mouth and a golden light began glowing. Sensing the immediate danger, and knowing there was no way to get out of grip, Chihiko began charging up her own Sero. When both parties released their attacks, the resulting explosion destroyed everything within a kilometer radius. Chihiko landed roughly on the ground, grating against the sand for a few moments. After gaining her senses, she attempted to stand up, only to fail miserably. Although she could sense no pain, she could tell something was wrong. Looking down, she found her entire left leg obliterated. Although she had regeneration abilities, hers were not nearly as developed as the Arrancar, and a wound this serious could take up to 10 minutes to heal. Far too long in the middle of battle. But seeing as she could, she found no consequence to her slow regenerative abilities. It would have been an entirely different story if her wing had been blown off though. She again took to the air and surveyed the area. She finally found what she was looking for, but was not the least bit happy about it. Smack in the middle of the crater was none other Neutra himself. Badly scarred and burned, but having no serious injuries, Neutra grinned back at the recovering Chihiko. He would finish this now and spare her any more pain. Neutra laughed to himself. This was fun. Chihiko was in a predicament. She could use her final attack right now, but if she missed, not only would she die, but Neutra would survive. That definitely wasn't a favorable situation. Making a decision, she charged at Neutra. She would drag this fight out a bit longer, make him tired and sluggish before killing him in fell swoop, literally. Hardening all the feathers on her entire body, she dive-bombed Neutra. Neutra jumped out of the way just in time, but wasn't expecting her to quickly change course and follow him again. Seeing no other choice, Neutra brought all 6 of his scythes up and slammed them down upon Chihiko's head when she got close enough. Instead of finding her target in Neutra's chest, she was painfully aware that her entire body had been buried underground and she was severely bleeding from multiple wounds on her head. She couldn't continue like this for much longer. She didn't give a damn as she missed anymore. If she didn't use her final technique right now, Neutra would kill her before she ever got another chance to use it. Chiyoko quickly pulled herself out of the ground, flapped up into the air again. She started charging up a Sero, except nearly 10 times more powerful than the strongest Sero she had used before. In this, eyes widened as he took a few steps back. Then he started maniacally grinning. If she was using a powerful Sero, then so would he. Chiyoko watched his actions. Even though he could feel the power of this Sero, he wasn't afraid. In fact, he looked like he was having fun. No matter though, this guy would be dead within the next. Sero had finally stopped ground at the size of a baseball. Neutra tilted his head to the side, wondering how she would shoot it. He definitely surprised, however, when she actually swallowed it. The Reiatsu this woman gained after swallowing it was unreal, possibly greater than Stark himself. Neutra narrowed his eyes, knowing exactly what she was planning to do. She had turned herself into a bomb. A fast, flying, motherfucking bomb that had its eyes right on Neutra. Not seeing a point in attempting to escape from this, Neutra did the only thing he could do. He swiped a little blood off his finger and into his mouth. Hee. This was going too loud. Using the blood he gathered, he started gathering all the reishi needed for a Sero of this caliber. Eyes widening, Chihiko mentally cursed herself for forgetting about the ultimate technique of the Espada. Gran Rey Sero. Both were the last resort of two very powerful competitors. But only one would prevail. Zem 107. Back in Las Noches, rumbling was felt throughout the palace. As if an earthquake had struck, everything began shaking and the floor even began cracking. Looking for a plausible explanation for this, Konami turned his head to Aizen. Aizen just waved him off. Don't worry, Tucson. Neutra has just found himself a playmate, that is all. No concern needed. That is, unless Neutra is killed. Konami nodded and continued about his usual business. Aizen smiled. The resistance was getting weaker day by day. Pretty soon he would be the undisputed leader of Hueco Mundo, and soon after, every dimension in existence. Zem 107. Neutra slowly crawled out of the gigantic crater. He had survived. The same could not be said for the woman though. Such a pity, she could have been a powerful Arrancar. Oh well, today would not be the day Neutra died. Do you need help getting up, sir? Neutra looked up and saw Tesla crouching down and offering his hand out. Neutra frowned and slapped his hand away and pulling himself to his feet. I can get up fine on my own. Why don't you go and do something more productive? Neutra snapped. Tesla bowed his head. I apologize, I would like to know if should head out after those revolutionaries that escaped. Bah, leave them. They were nothing but cannon fodder anyways. The really strong one is the one that I killed right now. Come on, let's get back to Las Noches. Yes, sir. Zem 107. Gaara couldn't stop crying. Even if he didn't see her die, he knew she was gone. Lord Gaara, please calm down, said one of his attendants. Gaara looked up with bloodshot eyes. Calm down. How the hell can I calm down when Chihiko was just killed? She was our leader and we let her down. Taken aback, the Hollow fumbled with his words. Gaara had never been like this before. He was always quiet and serious, the epitome of dangerously polite. Gaara hardly ever showed emotion, and when he did, it was always in anger or bloodlust. Right now, Gaara was displaying an emotion that had never before been seen by the others, grief. Suddenly, Gaara's sand began spinning around him erratically. All the hollows took a step back. Nahalo, one of the hollows, had been told about this before by Lady Chihiko herself. When Gaara loses control, he turns into a very large raccoon-type thing made of sand. That tail he already has behind his back gets longer and larger. Basically, it's a symbol of his power. When he loses control, he will not be able to distinguish friend from foe, he will only know and want destruction. Don't ever let him reach this form. If he does, you're finished. Nahalo took a step back in fear. Whatever Lord Gaara was turning into could possibly kill them all. Steeling his nerves, he stepped forward and shouted, "Lady Chiiko would not have wanted this. Please calm down, Lord Gaara. We have to think this through now. Lady Chiiko entrusted the future to you. You should take responsibility for this. Are you listening to me? Gaara, I believe you are mistaken, for I am none other than the great Shukaku." A growling voice came from within. As the ball of sand surrounding Gaara grew, so did the Reiatsu from inside. And in one move, all of it broke free. The Reiatsu had all the hollows flat on their backs, their bodies at the risk of caving in. All of their eyes widened at the sight of the creature that stood before them. This thing was indeed correct. This thing was no longer Gaara. This was a monster. It let loose a high-pitched cackle before announcing its freedom after so many years. It then set its sights on a nearby city. It moved towards the city, interested in what it was going to annihilate. The government of China was in great distress. In less than 3 hours, the entire west half of Shanghai had been blown to bits. The weirdest part being the way it was destroyed. It was as if something had been crashing through the buildings and residue of sand was found at many locations throughout the destroyed part of the city. One of China's largest cities and biggest economical depots had been blown to bits in a matter of hours. The worst part, China had no idea who did it. Their only clue was the surviving victims that they found. No matter how well they were treated, they all ended up dying, even they weren't hurt in the first place. But right before they died, they all seemed to fall into some sort of trance and repeatedly whispering, "Sandman, it was the Sandman," before screaming in agony. Nobody could determine a cause, but they all seemed to agree on one thing: it was the work of the supernatural. Zem 107. Search and Destroy. Unmei no Byakugan. As Neji's Zanpakuto faded from existence, the veins around his eyes bulged and his nearly invisible pupil popped out. At first glance, this may seem like a useless technique, but it far from it. This technique allowed Neji Hyuga, 3rd seat of the 6th division, to see to all round him nearly 360 degrees and unrestrained for nearly 2 kilometers. It also allowed him to see all the parts to a person's body, including all their internal organs. But currently he was scanning the entire Karakura town and the surrounding area for any signs of a hollow. He had saw a few hollows, but they were easily disposed of by the other members of his crew. "What do you see, Neji?" Sasuke asked. "Nothing yet, Uchiha Taiko. Lady Hinata and I have been looking over this area for a long time now, yet there have been no signs of the Vasto Lord or the Arrancar that attacked a few days back." Sasuke and Neji stood atop the tallest building in Karakura town. Sasuke looked down over the side of the building at the children on their way to school. There was something he was not getting about this. "Uchiha Taiko, I have a feeling that the hollow has moved on. But I believe the Arrancar will be back." Sasuke grunted. "I think you're right, Neji. But I can't just leave this town. It is in my understanding that your sister's Byakugan has a larger range than yours, correct? Tell your sister Hinata as well as Vice Captain Kira that they are to search in a 10-mile radius of this building for the next week. If nothing is found, we will report back to Soul Society," Sasuke ordered. Hi. Neji used Shunpo to disappear. Gaara was tired. He had been running non-stop for days. Many Arrancar had been following them since the day they escaped. Not only that, but the amount of reishi in this world was pathetically low. The only way for Gaara and his guards to get food were for them to eat humans, which, thankfully, there were plenty of. Gaara remembered what Chiiko had said, but he had no idea what to do. Their resistance had been over 1,000 strong, but now, their numbers had dwindled to less than 10. Gaara was pulled out of his musings when Yatara, one of his guards, pulled him back behind a tree. Gaara gave him a puzzled look, but Yatara just shook his head and pointed out to a clearing in the forest. Two Shinigami stood having a conversation. Their Reiatsu was fairly weak, but there was no use in taking any chances. Yatara was a snake like Ijuka's with small hands and arms near his mask. By general classification, his Reiatsu was average, but nowhere near that of an Arrancar. Regardless, he was more than enough to take care of two unseated Shinigami. Lord Gaara, you head back to the camp and inform the others of this situation. I will take care of these two, Yatara said. Gaara shook his head. I've already lost Chieko. I'm not losing any more of you. Yatara sighed. Ever since the fifth Espada attacked and killed Chieko and their forces, Gaara's personality had drastically changed. Originally he was cold, scary, and powerful enough to do anything without remorse. But now, he had become soft-hearted and tried to care for them as much as he could. He liked the fact that Gaara cared for them more, but at the same time it was this behavior that would lead to hesitation, and ultimately, death. Yatara grabbed Gaara's shoulder and was about to say something, when the Shinigami noticed them. What the hell are they? Their Reiatsu readings are off the charts. We have to report to Mayuri Taiko about this. Yatara was about to chase them down, when both Shinigami fell over dead. Gaara appeared next one of them and began devouring his body. Once he was done, he grabbed the second one and brought it over to Yatara. He dropped the body next to Yatara and said, "Eat up. They taste better than the humans." Yatara looked over to Gaara who ushered him on. Yatara ravenously ate every scrap of the body, tearing out only the parts he didn't like. He grabbed the liver of the body and put it in his mouth, savoring its delicious taste. It had been weeks since he had had a decent meal. Yatara then realized that they had nothing left for the others. What about the others? They haven't got anything to eat right now. Gaara just waved his hand. Never mind about them. Don't you feel that? That amazingly powerful Reiatsu. Tell me, what country are we in right now? Yatara scratched the bottom of his mask. Not sure. I think it's North Korea. No, wait, we crossed an ocean, so we're probably in Japan. Gaara nodded. It's definitely Taiko level, yet for some reason, it feels familiar. Yatara shrugged. Maybe you fought this one before. Gaara shook his head. No, I feel as if I know this from my time in the world of the living. That's impossible. You never remembered anything from your time of the living before. Yatara reminded Gaara. Gaara nodded and said, yeah, you're probably right. Maybe it is someone I fought before. But how could I forget about fighting someone that strong? Yatara shrugged and pointed back to the direction of their camp. Not sure, but maybe we should get back to the camp before any of the others worry. Gaara grunted and they made their way back towards camp. Zem 107. I see, Naruto said. He lounging on a couch in Las Noches, but if you want me to do all that work for you, you'd better give me something of equal value in return. Aizen smiled. He had gained another pawn, a quite powerful one too. Aizen was going to give an offer when Naruto spoke up, and none of that Arrancar bullshit. I have always been and always be a hollow, nothing else. I don't want go around imitating Shinigami. Aizen frowned. Well, what do you want? Not sure. Make an offer and we'll haggle. Aizen's frown deepened. As important as this hollow was to him, he didn't quite like his personality. How about I make commander of all Manos Grande under my command? Naruto sat back and thought for a bit. How about this? I become commander of all hollows under your command, all non-Espada Arrancar that aren't Frakens, and when all this is over, I get to be ruler of Hueco Mundo. You drive a hard bargain, Mr. Uzumaki. But all that is a bit much even for me. Naruto snickered. I thought you said you were a god. Surely a few soldiers and some land isn't all that much for you. I am not god yet, Mr. Uzumaki. Aizen replied coolly, but give me a few months' time and we can talk about gods all we want then. My final offer: I make you commander of all hollows in Hueco Mundo and make you the vice king after me, but the Arrancar are out of the question. Naruto considered this for a few, looked back at Aizen, still holding his chin. All hollows? Aizen nodded. Every single one of them must obey you and you only, save for me of course. Naruto shook his head and asked, of all the hollows in Hueco Mundo, why choose me? I'm probably not even the most powerful of all, Vasto Lord. Ah, but that's where you're wrong, Mr. Uzumaki. You may not have the most Reiatsu out of all hollows. In fact, you have almost no Reiatsu at all. Your energy source is different and as such much more potent and powerful. And although you already have this form with all this power, I have a feeling you're hiding an extraordinary amount of your strength behind that facade. This energy of yours, we call it Reiatsu Deviant 1, is extremely powerful and good weapon to have on our side. Naruto nodded and said, I'll think about it, I'll give you an answer within the week. Naruto got up and walked towards the exit. Aizen was just standing up when Naruto stopped in front of the door and spoke, by the way, there are very few things I remember about my past life. One of things I do remember is that this energy source is called chakra. I would explain it to you but you seem more like the guy that's interested more in the destination than in the journey. Naruto walked out of the room. Once everyone was away, Aizen leaned into Tusen's ear and whispered, the moment we're done with him, you kill Uzumaki. Konami nodded. Zem 107. Aizen was walking down the hallway away from a meeting with the Espada when he noticed a figure within the shadows of the wall. Well, hello there Naruto. Naruto walked out of his hiding place and complimented, no wonder you're their leader. A few Espada passed by and not one noticed me. You were the first. Thank you. Aizen said, now that you've come here, I believe it's safe for me to say that you have an answer. Naruto nodded, I'll work for you, but don't expect me to be your lapdog like the Arrancar are. I'll work when I want and when I deem it's important enough. Tell me Naruto, have you ever had a plant? Naruto confusedly nodded, it's my hobby to water them, but you don't really find any plants in Hueco Mundo. Aizen had a deadpan expression yet kept on talking, so if you had a plant but you didn't water it every day, only when you wanted to, what would happen to it? Naruto scratched his head while replying, I'm pretty sure it would die. Aizen raised his finger, exactly, and that's how this job works. You need to be here every day so that if anything pops up, you can be there to take care of it. Say you worked tomorrow but not today. If something had happened today you would be responding to the situation a day late. Do you understand now? Naruto shook his head. Aizen smiled. Good. Actually, there is a problem today that needs solving. Naruto raised an eyebrow. Aizen continued, my sixth Espada, Grimmjow, went down to the world of the living without permission, would you be so kind as to bring him back? Naruto shrugged and walked away. Taking that as a yes, Aizen grunted and continued on his way. Zem 107. Hisagi sighed. He was bored, much like everyone else. Not that he wanted something bad to happen, he just didn't want to be bored. Hisagi ears perked up. Though, when Neji shouted, Uchiha Taiko, I've picked up some Arrancar entering Karakura town through a garganta. All the Shinigami had been resting atop the tallest building in the entire Karakura town, a building that Uchiha Taiko had appointed their headquarters. The only ones not there were Kurosaki, Kuchiki, Hyuga Hinata, and Kira. Everyone else, except for Sasuke and Neji, had been relaxing. Where are they? Asked Sasuke. I don't know how I didn't sense them earlier, they're all heading in random directions. I can't pinpoint their destinations but I can guide you to them. Everyone, scatter. Sasuke commanded. Every last Shinigami complied. Sasuke smirked. He was gauging all the Arrancar's Reiatsu, and there was one that stood out over all the others. It was in the same area as that Kurosaki Ichigo. Using Shunpo, Sasuke was able to appear on top of a house on the street. Crouched down, he observed the fighting going on. An odd Arrancar whose mask covered much of his head was taunting Kuchiki as he jumped into the air. Sasuke chuckled a little when the Arrancar was frozen solid. Kurosaki, Kuchiki, and the soul in Kuchiki's Gigai all sighed in relief. Sasuke shook his head in disappointment. How could they not feel the second Reiatsu there? It was fucking enormous. Feeling the need to do so, Sasuke called out to them, Kurosaki, Kuchiki, be on your guard, there's another Arrancar, this one's much more powerful. Ichigo and Rukia simultaneously looked up. Rukia asked, hey, is that you Uchiha Taiko? Growling in agitation, Sasuke appeared before the duo, grabbed them both and pushed them out of the way of an attack headed straight for them. Once they were safe, Sasuke berated them, how could you not notice that? You people are idiots. Standing up, Sasuke motioned for the two to stay on the ground. He then turned his attention to the blue-haired Arrancar in front of him. The Arrancar laughed and gestured for Sasuke to attack him. Sasuke complied. Using Shunpo, Sasuke was able to appear behind the Arrancar but had the surprise of his life when he found that he was not behind the Arrancar was behind him. After receiving a thorough thrashing on his back, Sasuke landed on the ground. Uchiha Taiko. Rukia cried out. Don't worry about me right now, Kuchiki. Focus on making sure this Arrancar doesn't get away. Sasuke said. Rukia nodded. Rukia began the incantation while drawing on the air. Disintegrate, you black dog of Rodanin. Look upon yourself with horror and then claw out your own throat. Bakudo number 9. Geki. A red aura began glowing around the Arrancar. He tried to look upon himself but found it impossible due to him being in complete paralysis. Smirking, Sasuke got up and prepared to thrust his sword into the Arrancar when the Arrancar grabbed his sword. Sasuke looked up in surprise. Wah! How did you escape the Bakudo, Arrancar? It the Arrancar's turn to smirk. Putting such a weak Bakudo on someone with as much Reiatsu as me is useless. By the way, my name's Grimmjow. Grimmjow pulled the Zanpakudo out of Sasuke's hands and tossed it aside. So these are the toys you Shinigami play with nowadays. Figures. I'll show you a real blade. Grimmjow pulled out his Sao RD and brought it down in an arc on Sasuke. Not having enough time to dodge, grab his sword, or do an incantation, Sasuke tried a weak Hado spell, Hado number 1. Show. Grimmjow's eyes widened in shock as he was repelled backwards, his blade clattering to the ground. Falling in his butt, he yelled curses and obscenities at the Taiko. Standing once again, he formed a Sero and fired it off at Sasuke, who easily deflected it. Taking the time out of their battle, the two men picked up their Zanpakudo. Sasuke got into a stance and signaled for Rukia to be at the ready. Quickly nodding her head, she grabbed the hilt of her own Zanpakudo. Satisfied, Sasuke looked back to Grimmjow and suggested, I'm going to get serious now. If you're smart, you'll retreat and never return. Grimmjow gave a hearty laugh. You're about to get serious. What about me? I've been going easy on you since the moment I got here. You haven't seen anything yet. Sasuke didn't change his expression. I believe you wish to keep fighting. I suggest a change of scenery, for I do not wish to endanger the lives of innocent people. It's always about humans with you guys. Why don't you pay attention to the Yash threat, the one in front of you? Grimmjow growled. He threw his sword behind Guy's back and charged at Sasuke. Sasuke pulled his sword down so it was vertical, the top reaching his head and bottom at the thighs. A perfect position to block Grimmjow's horizontal slash. As the two blades clashed, sparks flew. The moment Grimmjow pulled his sword away, the two began an all-out Shunpo, Sonido war. Neither Rukia nor Ichigo could them. All that their five senses could pick up was the momentary glow of sparks when their blades met and the scratching and ringing noises heard an instant after the two clashed. After about a minute of fighting, the combatants landed about 5 meters apart, facing one another. Sasuke seemed a little out of breath and had a small cut on his lower left ribcage where Haori had been cut by Grimmjow. On the other hand, Grimmjow was huffing and puffing and had quite a few gashes on his torso. Kneeling down, Grimmjow smiled weakly. You think you're so much better than me. I will admit that you are good, but I'm better. Grind. Pantera. Grimmjow somehow transformed and now had a bone-like substance covering his body as well as a sharp bony tail. Cackling loudly, Grimmjow charged at Sasuke. Not expecting such speed, power, or even a Zanpakudo release, Sasuke couldn't comprehend and was struck down by a blow to the shoulder from Grimmjow's tail. Sasuke bit his tongue to stop himself from groaning on agony. Sasuke stood up holding his sword in both hands and attempted to slash upwards at the Arrancar. Seeing it from a mile away, Grimmjow leaned back and caught the blade. Sasuke yelled, now Kuchiki. Bakudo number 21. Sekienten. A large burst of smoke filled the area. As a reflex, Grimmjow let go of the sword and brought his hands in front of him for defense. Realizing his mistake too late, a sword was brought down upon him from within the smoke. Although unable to successfully pierce his arrow, it did succeed in hitting him to the ground and knocking the air out of him. Outside the plume of smoke, a certain Kuchiki clan member was reciting the incantation to another kick spell. The she was finished. She held out her arms and a perfect triangle formed of yellow light formed at her fingertips. 3 rods of light shot out from every vertex and slammed Grimmjow, pinning him to the wall of a nearby building, Bakudo number 30, Shitotsu Sansen. Grimmjow growled. This spell was much more powerful than the other one. He was immobile, pinned to the side of the wall. Their only mistake is leaving his limbs free. Smiling, he fired off a Sero, hitting Ichigo at point-blank range. Luckily Ichigo had seen this in time and shot his own Getsuga Tensho to deflect. Realizing only too late that the Sero was rather weak, the Getsuga Tensho blasted through it, creating a large hole in the wall where Grimmjow once was. His body now intact and movable, Grimmjow stood from the rubble. He charged at Ichigo and knocked him aside, but Ichigo was able to cut on Grimmjow's arm in just IB time. Regardless, Ichigo rolled on the ground gaining a mild concussion while Grimmjow suffered through a boo-boo on his arm. Get Kurosaki. Kuchiki. Stay out of this, I will handle this Arrancar myself. Sasuke ordered. Tunis nodded and moved to get out of Sasuke's way. Sasuke raised his sword directly in front him and closed his eyes. Copy. Sharingan. It was only at this time did Grimmjow realize that this man had been going toe-to-toe with him without even using his Shikai. Sasuke's Zanpakuto began dispersing into tiny barely visible crystals from tip to bottom. Once the entire Zanpakuto had become crystals, they then began dissolving into Sasuke's eyes. Once the process was finished, Sasuke opened his eyes to reveal a blood-red iris with 3 black tomo spinning around a black pupil. Not seeing the point of this ability, Grimmjow swung his tail out, intending to decapitate Sasuke. Seeing and understanding exactly what was happening, Sasuke ducked under the swing, grabbed the tail and pulled Grimmjow toward him. He then lashed out with a punch, socking Grimmjow in the chin. After getting the hit, Grimmjow spun in the air and landed on his feet. He brought his hands together and shot out a blue Sero. Seeing it coming from miles away, Sasuke evaded the attack and, to everyone's surprise, shot out a Sero of his own. Grimmjow's eyes widened. This Sero was an exact duplicate of his. Same color, same ratio, same power, same kinetic force, same everything. This guy literally gave Grimmjow a taste of his own medicine. As Grimmjow was blown back by the attack, he couldn't help but think that was exactly what his enemies felt when he attacked them. Grimmjow got up, signs of damage extremely visible, and shot forward. He had a theory about Uchiha's Shikai, but he wanted to make sure of it. But suddenly, he was pulled backwards onto the ground. Grimmjow looked down at his torso and found a red tail wrapped around it. What the? Grimmjow turned around and found a human-sized hollow standing behind him with 9 tails swishing around its back, one of which was lifting Grimmjow into the air upside down. Hey! Let go of me. Alright. The hollow dropped Grimmjow on his head. After Grimmjow resealed his resurrection, the hollow scolded him. What the hell were you thinking? Just about all of your Frakken were killed and you aren't in much better condition. You completely went against orders and attacked Karakura. Come on, we need to get back to Hueco Mundo. When the hollow turned around, Grimmjow punched him in the back of the head, making his head snap forward and shouted back, I don't take orders from you, only Aizen. I don't even know who you are. As the two argued, Sasuke watched on, getting more and more confused by the minute. But as he looked closer, he was starting to think that the hollow matched the description on a paper. A very special paper. The paper his orders were written on. This was the hollow he was sent here to kill. Smiling, he spoke 3 words into his radio. I found him.